For today, we are in Judges. We haven't been in Judges for about 3 weeks, I think it's been, because last Sunday was Easter, so we were not in here. The week before that was Palm Sunday, so I had a Palm Sunday message. The week before that was something I don't remember. It's too far back for me to remember. But anyways, we haven't been in Judges for a while. We had started Judges, and I'll show you where we are at. We had started Judges chapter 9, and there were 3 main sections. The first being conspiracy. We covered that already. Secondly, the second one was curse, and we covered that already. So we are in that final section where the crime is settled. And in case you're wondering, what crime? What's going on? Who are the judges and what's happening? Let me share with you just briefly about where we're at in the story in the book of Judges. A few chapters back from chapter 9, we met a guy named Gideon. Some of you may be familiar with him. If you're familiar with your Bible, you've heard of Gideon. Gideon and his 300 men. Well, God had done some incredible things through Gideon. Sent him out into battle with only 300 guys, and they were successful. And the reason that they were successful is because they trusted God. Now, what happened after those battles was all the people that Gideon was leading said, "We want you to be our king." And he said, no, I'm not going to be your king. Let God rule over you and lead you. It sounded fantastic, and I'm sure in his mind and in his heart, it was a wonderful idea, and I agree. That's a wonderful idea. Let God do it. Don't choose a king. Just let God lead you. Well, Gideon, he made some mistakes later on in life. He was used by God mightily. He was a man that was used by God mightily. He was a regular person that was used by God in irregular ways by God, but he was still just a regular guy. And he made some mistakes. One of his big mistakes was, among other things, among 2 really big things, one of the things that he did was he married multiple women. Now, that was the thing to do in that culture at that time. And obviously you all probably know that there are still today, modern day, places where multiple wives it's a thing. I mean, sister wives. We got TV shows about it, so it's still a thing. But back then, that was the thing to do. And Gideon, having been used by God in such an incredible way, was victorious. Well, you can imagine that in that culture, when he could marry lots of women, there were lots of women that wanted to marry him because now he's got all this prestige, and he was victorious, and he won the battles, and he saved the people, and oh man, I want to be married to him. And so he married multiple women. Now, this guy had been used by God. And so the question in your mind might be, well, why was he used by God if he did this? Well, that was after he had been used by God. And that doesn't mean that God stopped loving, well, I used you and now I'm done with you, get out of here. It doesn't mean that God stopped loving him. But why would God allow him to marry all of these women? Was God okay with that? Well, no. This is something called permissive will. Okay? The easiest way for me to explain it where you're going to get it is that once in a while, you will pop off to your parents. And they choose not to kill you. They're permitting you. That's their permissive will. They permit you to act a fool. They probably don't let you get away with it for too long. They probably put you in check. But that would be their permissive will. So this guy Gideon marries a bunch of women. Is it okay with God? No. God chooses not to kill him. That's his permissive will. He's permitting it, but it's not okay with him. Keep in mind that God's plan for marriage was one man, one woman. Okay? See that in Genesis chapter 2. God made them male and female. Put them together. That was the first marriage. And that's how it was supposed to be. Jesus confirmed that later on in the New Testament. So listen, from the beginning, God said, male and female, one man, one woman. And they were to be together, married. It wasn't multiple. So God's not okay with what Gideon is doing. Does he allow it? He allows it. Why? That's a good question. I don't know. You can ask him when you get to heaven. Although I suspect that when you get to heaven, you won't care anymore. You're going to be like, whatever, I don't care what Gideon did. Like, I made it to heaven, I'm good to go. But he allowed it at the time. Now, doesn't mean he's okay with it. So he allows that. Well, one of the things that Gideon also did, and you're like, he did more? Yeah. In marrying multiple women, he had lots of kids, and he actually had, check this out. For the ladies, the girls in here, if you've got brothers, try to let this sink in. Gideon had 70, not 17, 70 sons. Crazy. What was his Costco bill like? That's crazy. 70. You know, so the ladies that are in here, if you have brothers, what is it with guys? They just eat. Doesn't matter what age they are either, right? Like they could be, we're not even talking about teen siblings. We're talking about like even little boy, little kid, like little babies, man. They just like, they're constantly eating. Like what is going on? And, you know, their metabolism and whatever else. But 70 sons of Gideon. And, but then Gideon makes it even worse. And he has something called a concubine. Okay, now that's not a small, cute little animal with little spikes on it. That's a porcupine. Okay, what is a concubine? A concubine was, the easiest way for you to understand is for me to put it in your lingo, your language. He had a side chick. Probably had multiple side chicks, because again, you can imagine all these women were like, "Whoa, Gideon! He was popular, and man, I want to be his woman, you know." And so he had multiple women that he married, but he also had at least one concubine on the side, and she lived off in another city, and he could just, whenever he traveled, be like, you know what, I got a concubine in that city. Let me hook up with her tonight. And it sounds really wicked, and that's because it was. It was wicked. This was, again, not okay with God. But from that concubine, so he had 70 sons, but from that concubine, he also had another son named Abimelech. Okay? And when we started in chapter 9, it's what we were talking about. We're in the middle of talking about Abimelech, this son. And you need to understand that this whole situation started out bad with Gideon, you know, making these choices, and it is not going to end well. So if you're thinking right now, like, what is going on? Is God okay with this? No. And in fact, what the rest of chapter 9 is about, the crime settled. There was a crime committed, and I'll tell you about that in just a moment, but God is going to settle all of these issues. Now, this guy, Abimelech, he's got 70 brothers from other moms, right? What he does is, when he gets old enough, he goes to his uncles, his mom's brothers, their family, their city. And he talks to them and says, listen, why do you want all these 70 sons of Gideon ruling you? Why don't you just let me be your king, just one person? I'm your flesh and blood, you know. I came from your sister, you know. Like I'm flesh and blood. Like just make me your king, your ruler. And so they said, in all of their wisdom, you know, okay, that sounds like a great idea. You're flesh and blood. We want to make you our ruler. You lead us. So what they do is they get some money, and they give it to Abimelech, and they go, you be our ruler. Well, the first thing that Abimelech does is he takes that money and he hires, the Bible, actually, you go back and read it yourself. We're not going to read it right now. But earlier in the chapter, he goes in the conspiracy, he goes and he hires worthless men. Literally says that. Hires worthless men. Now, if you've got someone, you know, your boss or ruling over you or your team captain, and they go and they get some people called worthless, probably it's like a red flag. Like, I probably don't want to stick around for this. Okay, so he hires these worthless men. They follow him because they're getting paid. The very first thing that he does as the ruler is he goes and finds his 70 brothers, and he kills 69 of them. Why did he do that? He did that so that none of them could challenge his position. 69 of his brothers. Only one escaped, the youngest one. His name was Jotham. He killed 69 of his own brothers on the same rock. I don't know. It doesn't say how he did it, but I'm assuming he probably took them there and stabbed them, or took their head off of their shoulders by a couple of inches or whatever. I don't know what he did, but he did it all on the same rock. That was his first act as ruler. Now, if your ruler, the person in charge of you, does that, again, probably a good idea to go, you know what, I need to get out. I need to not be part of this. But people stuck around. They supported him. Now, is any of that okay with God? No. And that's where we're at in the story, is that now God is going to settle the issue. So, beginning at verse 22, we are going to see the crime is settled. And you go, what crime? The crime against the 70 brothers, 69 of them technically, and their dad Gideon, who is also named, he's got two names, Gideon or Jerub-Baal. So, as we read through it, you're not going to see the name Gideon, but you are going to see Jerub-Baal, same guy. Verse 22, after Abimelech had reigned over Israel 3 years. Now, put that in the back of your brain. We'll use that in a little while. 3 years. So now he's been ruling three. He kills his brothers, and now he's been ruling for 3 years. Verse 23, God sent a spirit of ill will between Abimelech and the men of Shechem. The men of Shechem were the ones that supported him. And the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech. Now, what does it mean that God sent a spirit of ill will? That means that after 3 years, God changed the attitudes of Abimelech and the men of Shechem who were supporting him. He worked inside of them and changed their minds and their attitudes so that they now begin to turn against one another. Okay? So that's what that means. I say that because people get all kinds of crazy ideas, and they'll this relationship that I have is, there's we're having arguments, and I think maybe it's a spirit of ill will, and they picture it like it's some ghost that God sent. It's like, oh, there's a ghost of ill will, and go over there, and no, it means that he was changing the heart, the attitudes, the hearts, the thoughts about one another. Why is he doing that? Because what Gideon did, what Abimelech did, what the men of Shechem did, none of it is right. So now God's got to step in and correct it all. He can't just let it go. He's going to correct it. So in verse 23, the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech. Well, what did they do? Verse 24, that the crime done to the 70 sons of Jerub-Baal. Who is Jerub-Baal? That's right, Gideon. Might be settled, so that the crime can be settled. There was a crime against the 70 sons. God is going to set it straight. So verse 24, that the crime, why did he send a spirit of ill will? That the crime done to the 70 sons of Jerub-Baal might be settled, and their blood be laid on Abimelech, that's speaking of the guilt, on Abimelech, their brother, who killed them, and on the men of Shechem, who aided him in the killing of his brothers. And in verse 25, the men of Shechem set men in ambush against him. So this guy that they previously liked, Abimelech, now they're setting ambushes against him. How did they do that? On the tops of the mountains. And they robbed all who passed by them along that way, and it was told to Abimelech. So in other words, these guys that had originally had supported Abimelech, now they don't like him anymore. So now they're waiting up in the mountains and watching. And when they see travelers going, in and out, they go down there and they rob them. Now these are the people that Abimelech is supposed to be ruling and protecting. So he can't have his people robbed, but that's what's happening. So they're attacking Abimelech by attacking his people. Now, that was, so you understand, this is all of this, verses 22 to 25, is God orchestrated. God sent a spirit of ill will. God is initiating this. Okay? Now, beginning at verse 26, and it's a long section, we'll do lots of reading here. You have this guy named Gaal. Okay, Gaal's pride. We're going to see what happens when you mix pride and just add alcohol. Is that a good mix? Let's find out. Verse 26. Now Gaal, who's this guy? And I'll tell you right now, he's a pawn. He's somebody that God is going to use. Now Gaal, the son of Ebed, came with his brothers. All these guys with their brothers. Came with his brothers and went over to Shechem. And the men of Shechem put their confidence in him. Now wait a minute. Previously, they loved Abimelech. They loved him for 3 years. But now, here comes this guy named Gaal. And now it says that they put their confidence in him. Now, was he better looking than Abimelech? I don't know. Maybe he had more money. Maybe he had more money. Maybe he had better brothers. Maybe he was stronger. Maybe he spoke better. I don't know what it was. But they turned against Abimelech, and at just the right time, here comes this guy, Gaal. But you know how it is. Sometimes, new kid on campus gets all the attention, right? If you're on campus and some new guy or some new girl steps onto campus, and if they're hot, all the attention goes to them, right? I don't know what it is. Or if the new kid on campus shows up and he's cut, or he's whatever it could be. He's whatever, his style's different, whatever it is. But hey, now Gaal is getting all the attention. So they put their confidence in him now. So here's what happens in verse 27. So they went out into the fields and gathered grapes from their vineyards and trod them. That means they crushed them. And what did they do? They made merry. Now you know what made merry is, right? You've heard of Robin Hood, the story of Robin Hood? Made Marian? Just kidding, it's not Made Merry. Made merry means that they made a party. Merry as in like Merry Christmas, like they celebrated. They celebrate. So they go out and they get grapes. And what grapes, what do they have inside of them? Correct, juice. And then grape juice can be made into what? Wine. Into vine, right? Wine, excuse me. Wine can be made into wine. So they made wine. And they made merry. What does that mean? It means that they made wine and they drank it. And they were having a party. In their minds, probably celebrating, Abimelech, get rid of that cat. We got the new guy in town, new sheriff in town, Gaal. He's here with all of his brothers. Let's party. Let's make merry. And they began to drink the wine and make merry. And in verse 27, and they went into the house of their God and ate and drank and cursed Abimelech. Isn't that a trip? Essentially what it means is they went into the church of their God. It wasn't called a church. It was, it was a temple. It was the house of their God. But they went into their God's church, essentially, that place of worship. And that's where they chose to go and eat and get drunk and curse Abimelech. What a trip. Because when we come to church, you and I, what we're trying to do is we're trying to come here and get closer to the Lord and not act a fool. Now, all of us, no, especially you guys, I didn't go to church when I was a teenager, but I've been involved in youth ministry for enough years that I know that when you get teens together, even sometimes in churches, sadly, what happens? People click up and, I don't like her, I don't like him, and, it's, you can have all kinds of foolishness happening in youth groups. And I get this is not a perfect youth group. We're promoting love for one another and trying to be at peace with one another. But I know that sometimes there's drama between some of you. And, you need to knock it off and get right. And you need to be welcoming to other new people that are coming in. But sometimes even in the church that happens. But we don't come here to party it up and, hey man, let's drink and let's curse one another and curse those other, we don't do that. We come here and we're trying to be right. We're trying to live right. Well, for them, their worship of their God, it was okay for them to get together, eat, get drunk, curse people. What a trip. It sounds like a bar. That's what it sounds like. What a trip. And here's what happens in verse 28. Then Gaal, the son of Ebed, said, who is Abimelech? And I imagine him just, who is Abimelech? And who is Shechem that we should serve him? Is he not the son of Jerubbaal? Who's Jerubbaal? Correct, Gideon. Is he not the son of Gideon, and is not Zebul his officer? Serve the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem. But why should we serve him? So what has happened is Gaal is the new cat in town. I don't know if he's good looking. I don't know, what he is. I picture him like Gaston, Beauty and the Beast. Just rough and tough, but I don't know. But now he's got some wine. So he was already a prideful guy, and then you mix in wine. And what happens? Well, for some people, just add wine turns them into fools. Just add alcohol, it makes, in their mind, they become bigger than what they really are. And that's what's going on with Gaal. They added wine to this fool, and now his mouth is popping off, right? You know what popping off is. You pop off. Now he's popping off. Now he's talking trash about Abimelech. And not only that, he makes it's a huge mistake. He mentions Zebul. Now, why is that a huge mistake? Well, here's the thing. Abimelech wasn't actually there. He's not at the party, but Zebul is. And this guy Gaal add wine, and now he's talking trash. And that's what happens. I know that all of you have seen it at some point in your life, even if it's not in your immediate family. Maybe you've been at a family wedding or some kind of family function. I remember it well when I was growing up. We'd go to have a family party at my grandparents' house, and there was always alcohol. There was always alcohol there. I didn't grow up in a Christian family, so there was always alcohol there. And I won't even talk trash on the rest of my family. I'll tell you about my own dad. My dad would be out there with the rest of my uncles, and they'd be drinking, and by the end of the night, his ball cap was sideways, and he was arguing with my mom about, give me the car keys. No, you're not getting the car. Give me the car keys. I remember him doing some foolish things. Why? Because just add alcohol. And what I've seen alcohol do over the years, and I'm not saying this as a badge of honor, I started drinking and partying when I was in junior high. And because I had older family members and older friends that I was partying with. And I've seen big, tough guys just add alcohol turn into crying little kids, make fools of themselves. I've seen women, young ladies over the years, you just add alcohol, they give themselves away to people that they don't owe anything to. I've seen it. Alcohol, that's what alcohol does. It take too much and it starts to take over. So we got to be careful. It's a wonderful lesson here in that you and I need to be careful with what we're consuming. And, obviously at your age right now, you're not supposed to be consuming anything anyways, but, in a couple short years, it's going to be here, and you're going to have to make that choice. You got to remember that you go, what does the Bible say? It's okay to drink, just don't get drunk. I know, but how do you get drunk? It starts somewhere. You don't just drink one glass of wine and all of a sudden you're drunk. What happens? You start with a sip. Turns into two. Turns into a half a glass. Turns into one more. Maybe just one more. That's how it starts. So you got to be careful. As you can probably tell, I do not drink alcohol. I don't say that again as a badge of pride, like, I don't drink alcohol, I'm so much holier than you. No. The reason I don't drink alcohol is because I know where it ends. I've already been there. And I know how it doesn't just start and end right there. It starts way over here with just one little sip. Well, maybe one more drink. I feel okay. Let me just get one more. Let me get one more. One more turns into two more, and that's how it goes. And so I've seen grown men turn into little kids, and then I've seen young people, drink, and all of a sudden they feel like Gaal, like, who is this Shechem? And all of a sudden they start popping off at the mouth and get themselves into some trouble. I've seen that lots and lots and lots, countless times over the years. So you got to be careful. What I would encourage, I can't require this of you because, I can't tell you, well, don't ever drink, because the Bible says don't get drunk. So, I can't say, well, if you drink, you're not a Christian. I can't say that. What I would caution you or encourage you to do is to exercise freedom for the weakest. Meaning, are there people around you that are weak in their faith and they're going to stumble because you're drinking? Keep them in mind and don't do the same thing. Freedom for the weakest. Maybe that's an area of weakness for you, as you get older again, but you want to keep that in mind. So you know what? I need to not even go there. Plus, I always want to keep my wits about me. I've already been in a place where I had too much alcohol in my system, and I didn't know what I was doing and what choices I was making. I had no control. I always want to keep my wits about me. I always want to be able to choose. I always want to be able to be aware. I always want to be, be functioning properly. I already have enough brain cells that are dead. I don't need to add some alcohol and lose even more. You know what I mean? So I always want to keep that in mind. Now, this is not a message on, don't drink alcohol. I'm just telling you, look, here are the dangers. And we get it clearly here because this guy, Gaal, he was already, whoever he was, but out at alcohol, and all of a sudden his mouth got bigger. And now he's talking trash against Jerubbaal in verse 28, but he also mentions Zebul. Zebul is at the party, man. What are you doing? But that's what happens. People get together, they start drinking, they start talking trash to one another, seen it lots of times, and that's what he does. So in verse 29, he continues, if only this people were under my authority. There it is. Wizard of Oz. If I were the king of the forest, right? The lion. If I were making the choices, if I were making the decisions, if I was the ruler, this is the way I would do it. Making huge mistakes here, talking trash. Verse 29, if only this people were under my authority, then I would remove Abimelech. So he said to Abimelech, increase your army and come out. Now, I just told you that Abimelech wasn't at the party. But then you go, wait, he just talked to Abimelech. I know. But Abimelech's not at the party. You go, but nobody says right there. No, that's what alcohol does. Have you talking to shadows, people that aren't around? I saw it this morning. I went to drop off a rental van, San Bernardino, on the corner of Baseline and Mountain View. It's hot down there. First thing early this morning, 7:30, 8 o'clock, I had just dropped off the rental van. I'm standing outside waiting on my ride, and I can hear somebody yelling. It's like I'm looking. I mean, it's not unusual right there in that part of town. I'm looking around like, where is that? I finally spotted the individual. They were across the street from me at the other corner, and they were up against the building. And I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, but he or she was like sitting there yelling, and stand up and sit back down and I'm looking around like, who are they yelling at? They weren't yelling at anybody. Why? Because whatever they were consuming had them seeing shadows. And so they're out there yelling at the air, birds, or rocks, or whoever they were yelling at. In their mind, somebody was there, and they were mad at that. Whoever that person was, they were in trouble. In some big trouble. But that's what it does. They were consuming things that they shouldn't have. It took control, because that's what happens. Those things, they take control of you. And then what happens is they get you popping off at the mouth, get you in trouble. So he says, man, if I was the king, I would remove Abimelech. And in verse 29, he speaks to Abimelech, increase your army and come, bring your army and get out here. I'll beat all of you. And in verse 30, when Zebul, the ruler of the city, heard the words of Gaal, the son of Ebed, his anger was aroused. And he sent messengers to who? Abimelech, of course, that's his homie. He sends a message to Abimelech, secretly, it says in verse 31, saying this, take note, Gaal, the son of Ebed, and his brothers have come to Shechem, and here they are, fortifying the city against you, getting everybody to turn against you. Now, therefore, in verse 32, get up by night, you and the people who are with you, and wait in the field. And it shall be, as soon as the sun is up in the morning, and you can see what's going on, that you shall rise early and rush upon the city. And when he and the people who are with him come out against you, you may then do to them as you find opportunity. So Zebul hears him running his mouth. He says, hey, Abimelech sends a message. Abimelech, you got to come. You got to bum rush this fool. Bum rush this guy. Because he's talking trash, and you got to set it straight. So, of course, what does Abimelech do? Abimelech's a warrior, straight up. He killed his own brothers. You think he's not going to come after this guy? He's too prideful. And so, in verse 34, so Abimelech and all the people who were with him rose by night, lay in wait against Shechem in 4 companies, 4 groups. And when Gaal the son of Ebed went out and stood in the entrance of the city gate in the morning, here comes Gaal after his night of drinking, Abimelech and the people who were with him rose from lying in wait. So they get up. When Gaal saw the people, he said to Zebul, remember he was talking trash about Zebul. He says to Zebul, look, people are coming down from the mountains, from the tops of the mountains. But Zebul said to him, you see the shadows of the mountains as if they were men. He goes, nah, you're not seeing men. Those are just shadows. Don't worry about it. Zebul is lying through his teeth. He knows that Abimelech's coming. He set it up. So Gaal, in verse 37, spoke again and said, see, people are coming down from the center of the land. They're marching straight at us. And another company, a different group, is coming from a different direction, from over by the diviner's terebinth tree, a special tree that they had. They're coming from that way. Then at that point, when Gaal realizes, no, these are not shadows, these are really people coming after us, then Zebul turns to him in verse 38 and says, where indeed is your mouth now? Come on. You've watched the videos, social media, school fights, or, someone walks up, fight's about to start, you've seen it on your own, somebody walks up like, what's up? I heard you're talking trash. No, I thought you were running your mouth. What happened? Where's all your trash talking now? That's what's going on. Zebul turns to this guy Gaal. Abimelech's coming with his army, and Gaal's like, oh, there's people coming at us. And then Zebul goes, yeah, where's your mouth at? All of a sudden, you don't have nothing to say. Here's Abimelech. You were talking to him last night. Why don't you just go talk to him? You told him to bring his army. Here he is. Where's your mouth at? What had happened with Gaal? Gaal had been filled with courage, right? He drank his courage. It wasn't real courage. It was courage from a bottle. It's not the same thing. So Zebul says to him, where indeed is your mouth now, with which you said, who is Abimelech that we should serve him? Are not these the people whom you despise? Aren't these the people that you hated? Go out, if you will, and fight with them. Go do what you said you were going to do. Verse 39, so Gaal went out. He did go out, leading the men of Shechem, and fought with Abimelech. And Abimelech chased him, and he fled from him. And many fell wounded to the very entrance of the gate. Then Abimelech dwelt, he stayed at Arumah, and Zebul drove out Gaal and his brothers, so that they would not live in Shechem. And it came about on the next day that the people went out into the field, and they told Abimelech. So he took his people, divided them into 3 companies, 3 groups, and lay in wait in the field. And he looked, and there were the people coming out of the city, and he rose against them and attacked them. Then Abimelech and the company, the group that was with him, rushed forward and stood at the entrance of the gate of the city. And the other 2 companies rushed upon all who were in the fields and killed them. So Abimelech fought against the city all that day. He took the city and killed the people who were in it, and he demolished the city and sowed it with salt. Means he demolished the city and then threw salt all over the ground. Why did he throw salt all over the ground? Anybody know why? Anybody know why? Was it because he was salty, had a salty attitude? What was it? It was because when you throw salt on the ground in large amounts, it poisons the dirt so that you can no longer grow anything there. So he destroys the city, and then when he's done, he gets his people to spread salt all over the place. And he's like, man, I'm going to wipe this place out. This is like, nobody's ever going to survive here. This is what happens when you mess with Abimelech, Here we go. So he's making a statement. making a statement. He's not just letting him off easy. He's like, I'm done with this, destroying him. So it says in verse 46, now, when all the men of the tower of Shechem had heard that, they entered the stronghold of the temple of the god Berith. So they run into their temple of the god Berith. Okay? Because what are they thinking? They're thinking, well, if we go in there, we'll be safe. A lot of people still think that. I used to think things like that. When I was younger, before I got saved, I used to think that carrying a card, paper card, with a picture of a saint on there, a Catholic saint, that if I just kept it in my wallet, that I would be protected from anything bad. Or that if I wore a certain necklace, that was going to be like my good luck charm. Or, if I had this cross in my car, then I'll never get into an accident. And people think that. I thought that. People think that. People, there's times when somebody will run into a church to try to save themselves, only to have the church collapse, from an earthquake. It's an earthquake, run into the church. God won't let the church fall down. And they go in and the church collapses. Or it catches fire, or it's whatever. You and I need to understand that, those, a necklace or a picture or even a church building is not a good luck charm. It's just a building. It's just jewelry. It's just a picture. It's whatever it is. I need to put my trust in God instead. But these people, they run into this the temple of Berith. And in verse 47, it was told Abimelech that all the men of the tower of Shechem were gathered together. They're all inside there. Then Abimelech went up to Mount Zalmon, he and all the people who were with him. And Abimelech took an axe in his hand and cut down a bough from the tree. So he cuts off this big branch. How big was it? Well, he took it and laid it on his shoulder. So it was big enough that he had to carry it on his shoulder. Then he said to the people who were with him, what you have seen me do, make haste and do as I have done. So what you saw me cut that branch, do the same thing quickly. So in verse 49, so each of the people likewise cut down his own bough and followed Abimelech. They put them up against the stronghold. In other words, they went to the building, they leaned these branches against the building, and they set the stronghold on fire above them, so that all the people of the tower of Shechem died, about 1,000 men and women. So he took these branches, leaned them against the structure, lit the branch on fire, and all of those branches that everybody had collected caught the thing on fire, killed everybody inside. Now, final verses. So we've seen God orchestrated this repayment for this crime. We saw Gaal's pride and how that played into all of this. But we're not done yet. We're going to finish right now with a few verses, and we're going to see that God finally repaid. Verse 50, it says, then Abimelech went to Thebes, and he encamped against Thebes. It's another city, and he took it. But there was a strong tower in the city, and all the men and women, all the people of the city, fled there and shut themselves in. Then they went up to the top of the tower. That was their safety, their place of safety. Now, the last time that happened, what did Abimelech do? Cut down a branch, took it over there, set the branches on fire, burned the place, killed everybody. So, same thing. Let's find out. Verse 52, so Abimelech came as far as the tower and fought against it. And he drew near the door of the tower to burn it with fire. But a certain woman dropped an upper millstone on Abimelech's head and crushed his skull. Unnamed. We don't even know who this woman is. But she single-handedly, with an upper millstone. Now, there are different sized millstones, and a millstone was used to mill things, to grind things. She, up in that tower, why she had a millstone, I don't know. Maybe they were grinding things up there. But she's like, takes this millstone, she looks out the window of the tower and drops it. This millstone, I don't know how big it was. My assumption is that it wasn't super heavy because it was a lady. I'm not trying to discount the ladies, but, most ladies would have trouble, even most guys would have trouble picking up a super large millstone. So this was something that she could handle. I don't know, maybe she was, bodybuilder, who knows? But she picks up this millstone, she drops it out the window, And out of all the people down there, it lands on Abimelech's head and crushes his skull. Now, it doesn't kill him, because we're going to see here in just a moment that he actually talks to somebody. So we'll get there in just a moment. But what a trip. Abimelech, out of all the battles that he's been in, all the warriors that he's fought against, a woman drops a rock on his head and crushes his skull. What happens? Verse 54. Then he called quickly to the young man, his armor bearer, the guy that would help him in battle, bring him his equipment. And he said to him, draw your sword and kill me, lest men say of me, a woman killed him. So his young man thrust him through and he died. Now, everybody will understand this, but especially the guys. For the guys. You know, if there's some kind of competition happening, if a girl gets in the mix, girls, ladies, you are highly motivating. If there are guys in some kind of competition, could be a baseball game, could be a race, could be a arm wrestling, could be thumb wrestling, for all I care. It could be anything. If there's a girl watching, all of a sudden, man, the guys get superpowers, right? And they'll step up to bat, and now maybe they were going like, I just want to get on base. Now they're like, no, I'm hitting a home run, right? And they want to get up there and want to do that for the ladies, you know, like make it like, oh man, I'm going to. Or if a lady gets into the competition, forget about it, right? Ain't no way I'm letting some girl beat me. And if that girl beats me, at the end of it, you tell your friend, if that girl beats me, I want you to kill me at the end, okay? Don't let me live. Because it got for the guys in our minds, like, no way, the girls are weaker. There's no way they're going to beat me, right? That's what we think. Now, some of you ladies, you're like, please, I could beat a guy any day. I can outshoot him on the basketball court, or I can run faster, or whatever. And some of you ladies can, right? But for the guys, it's like, no way, man, ain't no way a girl's going to beat me. So, and you might be thinking that was just your brother or just your friends at school. No, this has been going on for thousands of years. Here's Abimelech. He gets hit in the head with a rock. It cracks his skull open. He falls on the ground. I don't know how he knew that it was a woman. Maybe he was looking up. Maybe after he fell, the woman was up there giving high fives to the other guy. I don't know what it was, but he knows that it's a woman. And what he does is he goes, give me my armor bearer. And he's laying on the ground dying. The armor bearer goes, yeah, what do you want, Abimelech? He goes, listen, pull your sword out and kill me. Because I don't want any men saying that a woman killed me. So it's way better if you kill me. That way another guy killed me and not a woman. But you and I know that a woman killed him. He was going to die. He was going to die. That's why he knew he was dying. And a woman did it. And it's just like God to orchestrate that and bring shame upon this guy even in his death. So his young man thrust him through, and he died at the end of verse 54. And in verse 55, and when the men of Israel saw that Abimelech, verse 55, when the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, they departed, every man to his place. So like, he got killed by a woman, I got to go. And verse 56, look at this. Thus God repaid the wickedness of Abimelech, which he had done to his father by killing his 70 brothers. And all the evil of the men of Shechem, God returned on their own heads, and on them came the curse of Jotham. He had pronounced the curse, the son of Jerub-Baal. So it was God that did it, that curse. Jotham, don't get this thought in your mind like, oh, Jotham, he was like, up there, he had power to send curses. No, he just announced it, but it was God that was the one that cursed all of these people. But let me ask you a question as we finish. God repaid their wickedness. What wickedness? The wickedness of killing his 70 brothers. How long ago was that? Does anybody remember from the story? 3 years. 3 years. Josh, thank you very much. 3 years. He goes, yes, so what's the point? Abimelech and all of his worthless men, the men of Shechem, They thought they got away with it. They were like, man, we did it. Nobody stopped us. God didn't stop us. It's been a year. It's been 2 years. It's been 3 years. We got away with it. But the whole time, God was just keeping track. Keeping track. I'm going to repay you, Abimelech. I'm going to repay you, men of Shechem. I'm going to set it straight. The 70 sons, they died innocently. I'm going to avenge them. I'm coming for you. 3 years went by. What happens is when you and I sin, we oftentimes think like we'll do something bad, and then we're like, oh, where's the lightning bolt, you know? And then we go, oh, God didn't strike me with a lightning bolt. Maybe he's probably not okay with it, but maybe he just didn't notice that I did it. And then we go on about our business, and like a couple days ago, we go, oh man, nobody found out. A week goes by, nobody found out. A month goes by, nobody found out. A year goes by, nobody found out. 2 years go by, nobody found out. Several years go by, nobody found out. I guess I got away with it. Maybe God was okay with that. No. God is giving us, when we've been disobedient, and he doesn't just immediately strike us with a lightning bolt. By the way, God doesn't strike people with lightning bolts. But why doesn't he just immediately, like, boom, set us straight? Because he's giving you and me time and space to come to our senses and to say, you know what, God? I sinned. I shouldn't have done that. I knew it was wrong. And God, I just never should have done that. He's giving us that time, that opportunity to do that. But if you and I do not do that, eventually it might be 3 years later. It might be 3 decades later, whatever it might be. But God has kept track. He knows, and he will come and he will repay. Now here's the great news. In the book of Nehemiah in chapter 9, one of my favorites, it says there, but you are God, gracious and merciful, slow to anger. You're ready to pardon. That means you're guilty, but God is ready to pardon you from your crime. You go, man, how do I, like, what do I got to do? What you got to do is you got to confess that sin. You go, you know what? I'm not living right, God. I did this. I acknowledge that. I'm not right. Have mercy on me. Forgive me. And the Bible says, what does John tell us? That if you confess your sins, he is faithful and just to do what? To forgive us of our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Wow. Wow. He's ready to do that. He's ready to pardon you. But you need to confess that because God is not forgotten. He doesn't forget. He's keeping track. And the lesson is, it's a very simple lesson, one we've been learning since we were younger, and that is that, you know what, God's watching. You know, parents say, God's watching, because they didn't want you to do bad things. But as you got older, you realize, oh, I did it, and God, I'm not in trouble. God's giving you time. He's gracious. He's merciful. He's allowing you time to turn from what you're doing and to turn back to him. So, Father, help us, please, because we